The air in Ouagadougou was thick with dust, the kind that clung to lungs and skin like an ancient reminder of Africa's endurance. In the grand hall of a newly built government complex, two men stood at opposite ends of a long table. One carried the sheen of Wall Street wealth, tailored suit gleaming under the fluorescent lights, his watch worth more than a dozen villages. The other wore a plain military uniform, sleeves rolled, a beret resting on his head. His name was Captain Ibrahim Traoré, and his eyes burned like flint struck against stone. Scott Bessent had flown in under the guise of diplomacy, though everyone in the room knew why he had really come. He was not a man of ceremony. He was a man of conquest, though his battleground was not mud or blood, but numbers, contracts, and markets. For decades, men like him had treated Africa as a ledger waiting to be balanced, its resources as chips on a global casino table. "Captain," Bessent began, his voice calm but edged with arrogance, "I'll be direct. America is ready to make you an offer you cannot refuse. Your mines, gold, uranium, cobalt, are wasted under inefficient local management. We have the capital, the technology, and the global influence to turn them into wealth beyond imagination. And in return, Burkina Faso aligns itself with the greatest economy in the world. A future of prosperity, for you, for your people." Traoré did not sit. He leaned forward, palms pressing against the table as if to anchor himself. His voice was steady, but it echoed like a drum. "You speak of prosperity, but what you mean is theft. You speak of partnership, but what you offer is slavery dressed in silk." A murmur swept through the aides and officials lining the walls. Some shifted nervously, others stared at the floor. The tension was palpable, the kind that split rooms in half. Bessent smirked. "Slavery? Captain, you misunderstand. This is how the world works. Resources flow upward to those who can maximize them. You need us more than we need you. Without our markets, your metals are just rocks in the dirt." That was when Traoré straightened, his eyes blazing with the kind of fury that had toppled empires. "Over my dead body." The words crashed into the room like a thunderclap. It wasn't just defiance, it was a vow, carved into the marrow of everyone who heard it. The days that followed were a storm. Documents leaked, contracts drafted by American firms showing percentages that left Africans with crumbs while billions funneled offshore. Across the continent, whispers grew louder. Miners in Congo, farmers in Ghana, students in Senegal, everyone seemed to know the story of the captain who told a wall, street giant to his face, no. Bessent did not retreat quietly. His networks reached into Washington, London, and Dubai. Lobbyists pushed narratives in global media. Traoré was reckless, a dictator in uniform, a man leading his nation to ruin. Investment ratings were slashed overnight. Currency values dipped. Pressure tightened like a noose. But on the ground, a different reality was unfolding. Crowds poured into Ouagadougou squares carrying placards that read, "Dignity over. Dollars and Africa is not for sale." For every newspaper. Headline abroad painting Traoré as dangerous. There were 10 songs in local markets praising his courage. His words had become an anthem. "Over my dead body," children shouted as they played in dusty streets. "Over my dead body," women sang while pounding grain. The phrase traveled, unshackled by borders, crossing into Mali, Niger, Guinea. It became more than a rejection. It became a declaration of identity. But Bessent was not a man accustomed to losing. He doubled his efforts, this time in shadows. Mercenaries appeared near mine sites, guarding foreign assets. Drones hovered where none had flown before. Secret meetings were held in European embassies, plotting strategies to isolate Burkina Faso until its people cried out for surrender. One evening, Traoré met with his inner circle, a dimly lit room with maps and radios crackling. His commanders spoke of troop movements, of shortages, of foreign agents slipping through borders. A silence fell, heavy with the weight of impossible choices. Traoré broke it. "Brothers, sisters, remember why we fight. This is not about gold. This is not about uranium. This is about memory. They have stolen from us for centuries, and they believe we will kneel again. But we are the children of Sankara, the sons and daughters of those who resisted chains. If we fall, let it be with dignity, not with our backs bent." The room erupted in agreement. Not soldiers, not politicians, these were believers. Meanwhile, far from Burkina Faso, the story was catching fire. In Latin America, activists compared Traoré to Bolivar. In Asia, students painted murals of him alongside Che and Mandela. In the United States itself, young organizers quoted his defiance in rallies against corporate greed. What had started as a clash over minds was now a global conversation about freedom, exploitation, and destiny. For Bessent, this was intolerable. His empire thrived on silence, on hidden ledgers and unchallenged control. Traoré had turned the spotlight onto everything he represented. And so he escalated. A convoy of foreign operatives attempted to seize a cobalt mine in the north. They expected little resistance, just scattered villagers and poorly armed guards. Instead, they were met with a wall of humanity. Men, women, children stood shoulder to shoulder, refusing passage. They carried no weapons, only resolve. The standoff stretched into hours, until gunfire cracked the night. The world watched in horror as images leaked, unarmed protesters lying in the dirt, blood mixing with red earth. If Bessent had hoped to break Traoré, he had miscalculated. The massacre ignited a firestorm. Protests erupted not just in Africa, but in Paris, Berlin, New York. Hashtag surged. Hashtag Africarising. Hashtag mineral wars. Hashtag Traoré speaks. Even within America, voices questioned, at what cost do we secure our wealth? The climax came in a meeting not of governments, but of wills. In a secret location, Bessent confronted Traoré one final time. No cameras, no aides, just two men, embodiments of opposing worlds. You're making a mistake, Bessent said. His voice lower now, stripped of Polish. You cannot stop what is coming. The world runs on these minerals. Without them, economies collapse. I'm offering you a seat at the table. Take it, or be crushed under it. Traoré stepped closer, so near that Bessent could see the dust lines on his uniform, the calluses on his hands. You mistake us, Bessent. We do not want your table. We are building our own. And if that means war, then so be it. We have nothing to lose but chains. The billionaire stared back, perhaps for the first time truly unsettled. There was no calculation to make, no number to crunch that could erase what he saw in those eyes. Not fear, not greed, but something Wall Street could never buy, conviction. Months passed. The struggle did not end overnight. Economies wavered. Battles flared. The world watched as the conflict stretched beyond borders, pulling nations into its orbit. Yet the story of that one phrase, "over my dead body," continued to echo. In Burkina Faso, murals of Traoré's defiance painted walls in brilliant colors. In distant universities, debates raged about neocolonialism and the right to self-determination. And somewhere in a boardroom high above Manhattan, Scott Bessent stared at falling stock charts, realizing that sometimes one man's refusal could shake an empire. The war was not over, but the turning point had come. The mines were no longer just mines. They were memory, dignity, destiny, and the world would never be the same.